is it impacting your ability to show up normally in your life? That is what I would say is worth exploration and treatment, because if it is and you can't carry out your daily functions, there's a downstream effect to that unborn child inside of your womb space at that point. HG, if I'm going to kind of generalize it, is typically a combination of deficiencies in the body, toxicities, or poor detoxification efforts of the body.
Welcome to the Truth and Fertility podcast. I'm Haley Yeager. Today we're sitting down with Jes Reynolds. I was just telling her I'm really excited for this interview today because what she is so knowledgeable about is a very specific niche. And I think it's not even something I would have thought about, but I was looking at her Instagram and I'm like, this is so necessary, just talking about this specific thing. So what she is all about is called HG, or she was telling me how to pronounce it and I've already forgotten, but Hyperemesis Gravidarum. Okay, I'm getting nods. Yes. Okay. So that's what we're going to be chatting about today. I'm really excited to pick her brain about it. So Jes, why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself, and we will get rolling.
Yeah, so I am Jes, and I fell into this niche by kind of a stroke of unluckiness, I guess, and obviously having HG myself, and just really being a person who needs to know the why for everything, and, allowing that to come forward in this pregnancy experience, in my severe morning sickness. And fortunately for me, I was able to pair that with my clinical background in biology and physiology and figure it out, essentially. And now I'm supporting women with severe forms of morning sickness to manage it holistically through their pregnancy and even prior.
Okay. Yeah. Can you tell us what HG is? And if you're willing to even go into your story of how you even found out you had it and what you did.
Yeah.
All the things.
Yeah, so HG, or Hyperemesis Gravidarum, is a severe form of morning sickness. Of course, many women don't like those two terms to be used interchangeably, but I still think it serves as a benefit because so many people don't have a name for HG. They just simply know that they're really struggling in pregnancy, and oftentimes even care providers won't know, that this is a diagnosable condition. So women are often gaslit out of the experience of sort of, yeah, you have morning sickness. Yeah, everyone has that. It's normal. Where HG is different is that it is to a level that impacts your capacity to eat or drink, whether that's because of an aversion or because everything is coming back up immediately. In my case, I was throwing up between 5 and 30 times a day. And that lasted until I figured out the reason why. About 6 months, and I think it would have continued had I not really spent some time digging into it. So yeah, these women are really struggling. They're losing body weight, they're malnourished, they're dehydrated, often relying on IV fluids, anti-nausea, cancer medications or chemotherapy medications, allergy medications. So a lot of things that, if you talk to a pharmacist, they'd be like, do not take this during pregnancy, is like, let's just try it for these women when they're kind of sent into ER and stuff like that. So I really did want a natural alternative because for myself, I didn't want to be the test subject for these medications that have never been tested for safety in pregnancy. And so, yeah, with me, I'd had autoimmune disease in the years prior, and I went to many doctors. I lived a very healthy lifestyle already. I was an elite athlete through university. And so I'd always just cared about that. And I think that really bolstered my illness up enough that it made it hard to diagnose. And so I spent years going to every specialist. I think I probably went to 12 to 15, endocrinologists, ear, nose, and throat, oncologists, infectious disease doctors. They couldn't figure out what was the issue for me. And so sitting in the doctor's office at the end of all of this, and I'm like, I don't understand how no one has any idea. And what else could it be? And he said, I asked about nutrition. Could it be something I'm eating or not eating? And he was like, well, to be honest, you know more through your education about nutrition than I do. And so I just had sort of an epiphany at that point of like, the one thing that we put into our body every day is not considered a part of medicine. And so I took a nutritional therapy and epigenetics diploma on top of my master's in anatomy. And then that, of course, really sort of brought me to understanding the body to a much deeper level. And from there, I was able to reverse my autoimmune symptoms. I basically put a list together of all the things I thought I might have, and then I just treated any treatment that was common for all of them. I started there. So fast forward into my pregnancy, I end up hospitalized many times, and from there, I'm sitting there and the doctor's like, well, the medication should be working. Like, are you not taking them? What's happening? And I said, no, I'm not. Because again, I don't want to be the test subject. I know you can't test this. And he looks at me, he's like, I know we got some things wrong, like thalidomide and x-rays, but we're pretty sure this is okay. So I think you're safe. And I was like, no, but the medications did work.
Very confident.
Yeah. So the medications were
not confident.
working when I was in hospital. And so I was like, well, what are they doing? What is the acting pathophysiology here? And can I figure that out and then reverse the steps or kind of problem list what all could be contributing to that if this is the solution? And yeah, I just started digging into the research. I reached out to some holistic doctors. I reread a few books that I thought were going to be helpful. And from there, I kind of crafted a plan that was individual to me. This is the hardest part, is everyone's like, okay, so what is it? What did you do? And I'm like, well, for me, it was, I recognized that I was really low in minerals. I was having, my kidneys were really stressed. I was having other symptoms and signs of my kidneys. I had allergies in the past. So, was that more to do with specific foods or was that gut health? So it was really trying to identify all the areas that were struggling in me, and they were struggling prior to pregnancy, and then supporting them at that point in time.
Okay. So a few questions about, thank you for sharing your journey. When you were going through all of this stuff before you said you were pregnant and you were going through, with autoimmune and trying to figure that out and find different ways to heal that, do you think that is what contributed to having HD in pregnancy? Like, do most women with HD in pregnancy have an autoimmune disorder before that? Or is there any correlation there that you see?
I think there definitely can be a correlation. What I tend to see is that pregnancy just exaggerates existing problems. So for some women, that can be clinical autoimmune disease. That can be subclinical, where we have heavy, painful periods, we have headaches, we have migraines, skin issues, gut health issues, all these things that are kind of flagged as normal, that those actually get really the pressure applied to them once pregnancy comes on board. And that really is what can contribute to HG.
Okay. So HG is basically, I don't want to say basically because I don't want to simplify it by any means, but when you have some sort of underlying health issue pre-pregnancy, it's just going to kind of scream even more during pregnancy. Is that what I'm hearing?
It is. And then there's a number of people who will come to me and they're like, but I eat healthy and I do this and I do that, and none of those things apply to me. And for those women, it's almost often their nervous system. That's really the thing. So in my work and as I've gone on, supporting this over the last few years, the underlying root causes have broadened or increased in numbers, because I've had a client where like, okay, here's the 5 ways that I know that HG happens, and it was not that for any of them. So it's like, what else can it be? And so it's a little bit of an exploratory mission. But yeah, for those women, the nervous system also plays into it a lot.
Yeah, for sure. I think we downplay that a lot in all spaces of health, just the amount of stress and cortisol and all the things. Okay, so how would a woman know whether she has HG, or I don't want to say just morning sickness, but like, what is the difference between what is normal for feeling sick when you're pregnant versus you have HG, this is something that we need to investigate?
Yeah, so really it's going to be a little bit open to interpretation, but her foundation or the qualifiers that are in existence right now are generally vomiting 3 or more times a day, dehydrated or malnourished due to the vomiting or the food aversions, a loss of 5% of your body weight or more, 5% being a mild HG and 10 or more being a more severe. But for me, I really think that the diagnostic criteria is it impacting your ability to show up normally in your life? That is what I would say is worth exploration and treatment, because if it is and you can't carry out your daily functions, there's a downstream effect to that unborn child inside of your womb space at that point. Because HG, if I'm going to kind of generalize it, is typically a combination of deficiencies in the body, toxicities, or poor detoxification efforts of the body, and imbalances either in the organ system or in the nervous system. And so those all impact the baby. I mean, this is why I've been getting really passionate about switching towards preconception, because it's great to help women when they're in the thick of things. And of course, I'm there for that. But it's like we can actually change the terrain of your body prior to that pregnancy. And that's going to mean that you have so many more resources and you're so much more resilient towards that pregnancy. So, how are we expected to build teeth, bones, hair, muscles if we are deficient in ourselves and in our body? And this is why we have poor teeth and our hair fall out and, our fatigue and our postpartum depression and anxiety. Like, your doctor's not looking at the fact that you're completely deficient in nutrients and that's why, or that your liver is struggling and that's why mom rage is coming out. It's the body's actually talking. We just have never been taught to listen to it. And sadly, that's impacting the base foundation of the child that's going to be born through that mom.
Yeah. Okay. I'm really intrigued about the whole preconception idea because, I mean, from what you said from the beginning, if you have something going on pre-pregnancy, it's really just going to scream even more during pregnancy. So what I'm curious though about is I could see a woman who maybe she already had a pregnancy and it was really bad. She had HG and she already knows that is something that she is struggling with or she's experienced that before. I could see like maybe for baby number 2 or wanting to try for baby number 2 being really like, okay, yes, I need to make sure that my body is prepared for this. But what would you say to the woman who has never been pregnant, wants to be pregnant in the future, but maybe may or may not ever experience HG? What would you tell her about preparing her body for pregnancy to make sure that her pregnancy goes smoothly?
Yeah, I really think that we have been undersold the responsibility that we have for this. Preconception is a way to ready our body with resources to provide to that baby. And so often what we see on TV or what we hear from the doctor is take a prenatal, no talk around the quality of that prenatal, and kind of do your thing. And then we'll see what happens once you're pregnant, or hopefully you get pregnant the first try. Like, that's really kind of all that is circling in this mainstream conversation, where the entire ecosystem of your body is what your baby will be coming through. So the nutrient stores that you have, the mineral stores, those are going to build the teeth and the bones. The level of toxicity in the body, have you ever had issues with mold, parasites, fungus, strep throat, H. pylori, like all these different infections that can still be harbored in the body. And then the energetics. We see so many people say it's genetic, it's passed down. And even in HG, the leading theory is that it's genetic. And that's not true, because if it was genetic, how can I change my own story and the story of hundreds of women, 1 month to the next, essentially during their pregnancy, that I'm not that good to change the genetic code in any way. So what we're talking about is epigenetic expression. And this is the upregulation or downregulation of your genetic susceptibility based on environmental factors. And the more that you can write those in the right direction, the less likely you are to express disease states. And so maybe you're not sure if you'll get pregnant, or you're not sure if you'll have HG, you've never had it before, you've never been pregnant before, but that doesn't really absolve the responsibility of wanting to lay the best foundation possible for your child. And sorry, when I was speaking about the genetics and people saying like it's genetic, not necessarily HG, but just any health condition, it's like, is it genetic, or is the eating behaviors that you do genetic? Is it the thought processes? Is it the suppression of anger because that's what you saw your mom do because it wasn't safe to get mad at your dad? Or it's all of these things in combination that we learn to be a human through mirroring. And then that's why that disease can still represent itself in that next generation.
Yeah. And I think I mean, I am not the person to ask about anything with genetics, but I do think, I feel like we're more disposed to things like based off of genetics, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we are doomed to experience X, Y, or Z, because so much of it is based off of behavior. I'm even thinking, in the example of mental illness or depression, anxiety, maybe you had a parent that really, really struggled with that. And so maybe you are more disposed to struggle with that, but maybe you decide to go to therapy, or you decide to eat healthier, or you decide to do something different behaviorally to manage that. So I feel like, with any of these things, we might be more disposed to experiencing one thing or the next because of our genetics, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're stuck in that, or that we're just doomed to experience that. So with HG, because I know you have a whole program in helping women who are going through this, or maybe hopefully to prevent it in the preconception state. What do you do? Like, what is the first thing? I'm assuming a lot of it's nutrition, but what are kind of the steps that you would take to help somebody through that?
Yeah, I've now created 2 pathways for this, because obviously it's very different if you're pregnant at that moment versus if you're in preconception. In preconception, we can do a lot more to cleanse the body, to assess and mobilize, infections or parasites, or, create energetic balance in the organ systems, versus when you're pregnant, it's kind of like where are the bottlenecks, what systems are under extreme stress right now, and what is needed to support them. So the things that I do are the same. It's just how heavily we lean into one area versus the other is different. I tend to look at everything. It's interesting. I did this even before with clients and friends who had autoimmune disease, but I tend to look at everything from a few different lenses. So nutritionally, does that organ system have what it needs? If we've identified, say your liver or your kidneys or your gallbladder or your stomach, like, does it have what it needs nutritionally? And every organ does have a subset of nutrients that are needed for it to carry out its function. So that's something that's important. It's why I would never recommend, say, a juice cleanse for the liver, because you're missing many key nutrients that the liver needs to carry out its function. So you're actually never able to complete that detoxification. And that's why some people get, detox flus or whatever the case is. But let's look at it nutritionally. Let's look at it through the lens of pathogens or bacteria or infections that might be residing in there. Is there anything that we can do? Now, in pregnancy, that might just be supporting your body's natural effort to drain and detox as is, whereas preconception, that might be a deeper cleanse. Let's also look at, are there any herbs that can support this organ's function? And why? So, if we're looking at the liver may be overburdened because there's a hormonal imbalance. And so maybe it's having a harder time with elevated levels of estrogens or xenoestrogens, or perhaps the liver is deficient in nutrients it needs, or perhaps the lymphatic flow is really congested and the liver's moving slow that way. There's a lot of different things that we can look at. And then I always like to bring in the lens of the emotions of that organ. So in traditional Chinese medicine, the liver is responsible for anger, irritability, rage, resentfulness, even guilt. And so if we're someone who experiences those emotions a lot, that usually tells me that the liver's at its max capacity, and what's flowing out is emotions rather than a symptom of some other, like the emotion is the symptom as well, right? So this is really prevalent for like mom rage. It's like your liver is struggling. And so we'll look at it through that lens and see, is there something that is really being expressed that's going to point us back to this direction? Or vice versa, is there something that you never experienced? And so we know you're really repressing this. And this kind of happened to me in my journey. It was like I got asked by a residence practitioner about my anger, and I'm like, oh, I'm never angry. Like, no, I never yell or whatever. He's like, okay, cool. So you've been suppressing it for what, your whole life? And I'm like, what? So it was kind of this, like, you're either expressing or suppressing. So just in that way that I just spoke about, now we have 3 different ways that we can look at that one organ system that we think is struggling. And if we can't support it one way, we can support it another until we've widened the window of capacity, and then we can start to do things. So for example, if someone's really sick and they can't take in a certain nutrient, or they can't eat a certain food that maybe your liver really needs, it's like, okay, well, can we work on the emotions and energetics, or can we do something herbal or, to your body that might move things through the liver more easily. And then at that point, once the liver has more capacity, maybe we can take on some nutrients for it.
Yeah. So you were saying that with every organ system, you're looking at, those kind of criteria or lenses.
Yeah.
How do you know, this might be a dumb question, but how do you know which organ system to start with? Like, how do you know to start looking at the liver, or how do you know how to start looking at something different?
So I'm really like, okay, so first I studied kinesiology, then I studied human anatomy. I have my master's in anatomy, and then I studied obviously the nutrition and epigenetics. Since then, every time I hear something that I haven't known, I've gone like down rabbit holes. So I know more than most dentists about like palate and airway health and whatever, right? Like I just
That's
get
a great
fixated.
quality to have.
I just get fixated on these things that I have to know. And so I spent many years studying the microbiome, gut health. I then I was taking, because I became a physiotherapist, I was taking traditional Chinese medicine for my acupuncture training. And then in that, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm not like, no wonder their shoulder injury isn't getting better. This is actually a referral pattern from their gallbladder. And so I was seeing these clients, and then I wasn't really allowed to talk about that in my clinical practice. And then fast forward, I started getting into German new medicine as well. And this is really the study around, it pertains to cancers, but I think it really plays out in any disease state. But this idea that like a stressful trigger or an emotional triggering event stimulates a cascade of biological laws. So the body will always either want to lay extra tissue or remove tissue based on the conflict that happens, and where that happens depends on, where that is triggered in the brain. So it's just been all of these pieces that come together that now make this intuitive for me. So I listen to a woman's story and I'm hearing like, oh, I have rage before my period, or I'm crying, or I have hormonal breakouts, and, I have mood swings, and I get angry when I'm hungry, and just like all these different patterns. And it's like, okay, checking the box for the liver, and another one. So I really spend time and build this story through listening to her. And then it's like, okay, A, B, C, and D are really showing up. Where do I want to start? And I kind of have to just, I always laugh that like, those memes where it's the guy and he's got the wall of like newspapers and pictures and the string and the pins are all over. It's like, that's the process. That's my brain when I'm helping these women. And so that has made it that I can't outsource this job. I just have to sit with it myself, which obviously puts a cap on how many women I can help. But it's still, that's where it usually starts. And I'll just intuitively ask something and they'll be like, oh my God, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes it does take that question from somebody else to recognize, oh wait, that is something that like, even what you were saying with the doctor that was like, are you ever mad? And you're like, no, I'm never. Yeah. I'm like, oh, you're just suppressing it. It's like, oh, okay. Maybe there's something going on there. Yeah. Okay. In my brain, I keep going back to the word you're throwing around, epigenetics. Mm-hmm. It's something that I've heard about before, but if you asked me to explain it to you, there would be absolutely no way that I could. And given the fact that you're talking about this and how it relates to HG, I keep thinking, I don't know if you're an Office fan, but I just keep thinking of like Michael Scott when he's like, explain this to me like I'm 4. like really dumb it down. Can you do that? Can you explain that and how it affects HG in a way where, because you were talking about how it's not necessarily just genetics. Yeah. But anyways, I'll let you talk.
So what I would say is everybody comes into life with this kind of genetic code. And some of the genes that we inherit are slightly, I use this term, they would say, the term is a SNP, like a single nucleotide polymorphism, which is going to lose your things. But basically these SNPs are slight modifications to what we would quote unquote call normal genetics. Now, I have a problem with that already. Like there's not one set of genetics that like we all just copy and paste and we all have the exact same genes. But regardless of that, your genes is sort of like the code that makes up you. Now, some of those genes have a tendency to predispose us to, say, a certain disease. Now, whether we're going to get that disease depends on whether that gene, that think of a light switch, think of like a wall of all these light switches, and some are on and some are off. But if 5 of these ones are on, then you might get a disease. What turns those light switches on and off is your emotional beliefs, your nervous system regulation, your nutrition, etc. So epigenetics is the field of study around how do all of those things in our life and in our environment turn on or off disease through genetics. So yeah, genetics is sort of the code. Epigenetics is that code going to be activated or not? Is that light going to be turned on or not? And if it's turned on, then you have more of a chance of expressing a certain disease, essentially. And when we look at this, epigenetics actually has the capacity to impart change on up to 95% of genetic expression. So when someone says this is genetic, well, you can still change between 30 to 95% of that genetic expression. Therefore, like, is the light on or is the light off through your food and your environmental factors?
Okay. Yeah. That makes a whole lot more sense. So I'm thinking too, I'm thinking about the genetic portion of this as well, because we were talking before we started recording that a good family friend of my family, I never knew that she said she had HG or if it was ever diagnosed that, but she definitely for all of her pregnancies was hospitalized multiple times, dehydration, throwing up. I mean, it must have been that. And to the point where after pregnancy number 3, she's just like, I will never do this again. I cannot do this again. Yeah. And just decided to no longer have any more children. And I don't blame her. But now her children are adults and 2 of them are women. And I'm just thinking to myself, you know, are they more disposed to having that? So, and I think probably with what you said, you know, they might be predisposed to have that, but there's definitely different things that they can do or different ways they can prepare their bodies so that they don't experience that, or maybe the symptoms are a lot less. Yeah. And I also think too, the resources that we have now are so different than the resources we had 20, 30 years ago. I mean, it's really amazing, especially with like holistic medicine, natural medicine. We're just learning so much more about the body. Now I want to get into more of the practicals too of, let's say a woman is pregnant right now. She's realizing, oh crap, like maybe I do have this. I have this HG thing. And she comes to see you. From what I was hearing, you're going to go into her story. You're going to try to figure out, you know, what organ system to kind of hit first and looking at it in different lenses. But what are some of the practicals that a woman can do, even right after you're done listening to this episode? What are some practicals that a woman can do to really start getting on a journey toward a healthier pregnancy?
Yeah, I would say one of the first things that I typically ask or want to change very quickly is like tap water. If you are drinking tap water, and I was actually putting through a Berkey filter, which I thought was great and helpful, but it actually ended up being really dehydrating on me. So our tap water, if we think about it, is essentially purified sewage. Like it goes down the toilet. Is it
wherever you live? Because depending on where you live, I mean, I'm in Arizona. You don't want to drink tap water. Yeah. But I feel like in other places, I've heard that it's better and it's more fresh, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Is it really just everywhere? You don't want to?
I don't know a place that's like somehow just siphoning off a fresh spring and utilizing that, because it has to meet standards. So often they're recycling, and if they're not, then maybe they're getting some water brought in from a water source. But like, is that rain catchment or is that lake water? Do we trust the cleanliness of either of those? And I don't know. And tap water too is like, I see, and I don't know the exact workings of like tap city water systems, but I know that they pressurize the system through those big like water towers sometimes. And all of those have like 78 5G towers on top of them now. I'm like, oh my God, that's probably not doing anything good to the structure of water. So water really is meant to be a living organism. It's meant to interact with our biology. Again, if we have just cleared the sediment and then chemically treated it to get it to a certain cleanliness, we haven't removed pharmaceuticals. We haven't removed certain types of chemicals, well, chlorine, for example, right? Obviously. So drinking tap water, and this is why like so many people too, they're like, I cannot drink water. Like I can't even have a sip. My body rejects it. Like, yeah, because it's a toxin at this point to your
Wow.
system. So I would say really now what the next best thing is, I mean, a spring is really great. That's not always feasible for a lot of women. So we tend to kind of go in a ranking order of like, can we do this, this, and this? Because there's multiple factors when it comes to water. It's how clean is the water, and that's great. But the more clean it is, the more dead it is, and more stripped of its natural minerals and elements.
Okay, I want to get into that really quick because you're the first person that I've ever heard say anything negative about the Berkey, the water filter. So, what does that mean?
Yeah.
How dead it is? Like, yeah,
Well,
go into
I
that. What does that
loved
mean?
my Berkey. It sat on my counter proudly. It was like, I'm like,
Right?
yeah. But it was because it was filtering so much, and because the water quality, again, I'm putting tap water into it, it's filtering it even further. Great. But it has no minerals. It has no nutrients. It's essentially just void of everything at that point. And so what was happening is I was super mineral deficient. So we do need things like if you caught water going through a stream outside, it's completely different. It has tons of magnesium. It has probably a little bit of iron. It has some potassium. It has chloride. It has sodium. It has all of these different things in it that are not making it into your body when we drink it in the form of tap water, and then we further filter it. So yeah, so many people are like, well, I have a fridge filter, or I have a Berkey, or I have a Brita, or whatever. And it's like, that's great. You're cleaning your water, but your water has no nutritional value at this point, which is we don't actually need water. We need the nutrients that are in water.
Huh. Okay. So then what do you recommend? What kind of water should you drink?
I don't have a perfect thing because this is really it. I mean, if perfect is like you live on a property where a fresh stream is just billowing up the side of a hill and there's no
What a
toxins being
dream.
dumped up that hill, that is great. But really, it's a combination of clean water source. There's three components to water. It's cleanliness, it's well, I don't know if there's three. I'm making them. I'm making my own three categories. There's the cleanliness of that water, right? Its toxic profile. There's the mineralization of that water, which is how deeply it's going to hydrate you. And then there's also the structure of water. And so that is, does it, like a snowflake has a structure, right? A snowflake has a pattern. Water is meant to have that pattern too. And it will when it's in combination with nature and from a living source. So again, spring has structured, remineralized water or mineralized water. So yeah, ideal is a spring, but if not, then it's a combination of like, what's your water source? So is it a city? Is it a well? Is it a bottled? What then can we do to make sure that the content of that is nutritious? And then there's also filters and machines and gadgets that will remineralize it. So you caught me at an interesting time because I'm deep into my water research to try to figure out like because none of the filters, none of the machines, nothing does it all. And so I'm like, well, what does the most out of it? So stay tuned for my findings on that one. But yeah, it's overwhelming.
Would it be I mean, I'm just thinking too of like, what about putting a lemon in your water? Like, does that do anything to help, like, at least give some sort of structure or
It adds some vitamin
a
C back
profile?
in. It can a bit, yeah. So I mean, if you were to add a high quality salt, if you were to add a lemon, if you were to stick that water outside in the sun for a couple hours, you'd get it to being somewhat improved. There's actually a company in the States, I think it's called Living Water. But they only have like 2 or 3 locations where you can get it because it's captured and delivered to you same day from a spring. So if I was in one of those places, I'd probably get that water. But yeah, I'm not there. So
Are you in Canada? You sound like
I'm Canadian,
is
but I
that where
live
you're
in
from?
Mexico, actually.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah,
Okay, so water. That's one of the things that we can change
yeah.
to one of the practicals. What is something else, another practical that you'd recommend?
Would say something that's important to be having. It may not be the first thing that comes up in conversation, but making sure you have a daily bowel movement, because that is your body's way of ridding itself of waste. And particularly when people are pregnant, they become slightly more constipated. If you're taking any medications for that nausea or vomiting, it's going to be that even more so. So making sure to have a daily bowel movement. this is probably relevant for 80% of my clients. So I feel like it is a good piece because our body, our cells detox into our lymphatic system. Our lymphatic system dumps into the liver. The liver passes that twice through as two-phase detoxification. Then it sends it into the bile and through the digestive tract to eliminate. So essentially, there's a whole bunch of toxins in our stools that needs to be eliminated. And if we don't, then it sits in the digestive tract getting reabsorbed. The water out of that's getting reabsorbed. The toxins out of that are getting reabsorbed. So it's very easy to then have a body that wants to get rid of toxins through vomiting instead, because you're actually not eliminating through the regular channels. So that would be something. Now, how you go about that really depends on the woman. We can use magnesium citrate, we can use vitamin C, we can use like massage, abdominal massage, some visualization techniques, creating routine around your bowel movements. Like every morning you get up and sit on the toilet and just sort of like breathe there. Of course, we can use water enemas as well. But I've had clients say they've gone from a week to 4 weeks without having a bowel movement. And it's like, that is a toxic body at that point.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. And whenever I'm talking with somebody about regular bowel movements and making sure that that's healthy, my immediate thought goes just to the gut and how important it is that your body is detoxifying and all that. And so much of that is about nutrition. I'm thinking now, especially as we're talking about practicals, for a lot of women, okay, I'm going to use me for an example. I have 3 kiddos, and with every single pregnancy, I've had some sort of aversion to food.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking for my first pregnancy was my son. I could not eat any chicken at all. It just, the thought of any way that you cooked it, especially grilled, I just was like, baked, but I couldn't eat anything except for Chick-fil-A. I could eat Chick-fil-A all day, but other than that, I couldn't eat it. And so I give that example because, actually, funny enough, when I gave birth to him, that was the first thing that I wanted. I was in the hospital holding him, and I'm like, I want a grilled chicken sandwich right now. Like, that is the first thing that I want, which is very bizarre. But when a woman is pregnant, maybe has HG, maybe doesn't, but I feel like a lot of women have cravings, aversions, whatnot. And so I think changing their nutrition during pregnancy poses more of a struggle, because you're playing around with these aversions and cravings as well. So every woman is different with what they want and what they don't want, but what would you say to somebody who's maybe they have HG and they have aversions to everything, but they're feeling constipated, like something has to change with their nutrition, but they're struggling because they're throwing everything up, or they're like, what are the practicals with where you start like tiny bit by tiny bit to help a woman who, when she's pregnant, especially with HG, can't keep anything down? How do you start with changing that nutrition?
Yeah. So really it's about why can't we get those nutrients in? Isn't it aversion to that nutrition? Is it a measure of digestive function? Is it slow motility that's just now the body just doesn't want to bring anything else in? So this is really part of the work that I do, because every woman is different for what that answer is. It's like, but I do have to identify what is one thing that will move the needle enough that now that window of like, I can maybe do one little thing, but that's it, grows. And now I can do another little thing and I can add it in. So it's about these, like, I call it like widening the window. It's like, this is how much we're capable of right now. But if I do something that gives us capacity to here, we can add something else in, and here and here and here, and we slowly shift it. Now, I do want to talk about aversions because you're sort of touching on those, and the aversions are so often not about the food, it's about the capacity to break down that food. So sometimes, maybe there was chicken, and I don't think so because you want a Chick-fil-A, and I don't know, I've never had Chick-fil-A because I'm not American, but like something about Chick-fil-A and pregnant women, like it's a universally safe food. I don't know what it is. But so often, maybe your body, maybe those, depending on the source of the chicken, I don't know, you could have tested this, but perhaps your body is saying, there's a lot of hormones or antibiotics or pharmaceuticals into that chicken, or it's eating crap and it's providing no nutritional value for the body, so the body will reject it. I think what it has to do more of for you is digestive strength. And this is something that comes up for a lot of the women. It's like your body won't bring in a food that is going to struggle to digest, because in order to break down protein in particular, you need to have adequate levels of stomach acid, and your stomach has to be functioning well. And if it's not, then that food's going to come in, it's going to sit there for 2 hours, you're going to throw it back up, and you've actually spent energy rather than gotten any energy from that food. So if we can identify the area of digestive struggle and we do this by saying, what foods are you averted to? Like, those will all speak to things, because there are a number of different, like, carbohydrates pretty much partially digest in your mouth with your saliva. So that becomes blood sugar through even just absorbing through so quickly. So the net gain of energy is really high, which is why we can tolerate those soda crackers or a piece of bread or something. Versus chicken, for example, it has to, and depends on the type, right? There has to be a big component of protein breakdown into amino acids. And so that is heavily dependent on the level of hydrochloric acid and pancreatic enzymes in the stomach. Now, if that's not going well, and we can identify that, like, food's coming back up after an hour, or you throw up later in the day and food's coming out with it, we know it hasn't passed into the next section. So it hasn't passed getting to the level of digestion that it needs to there. Then it moves into the duodenum, and then again, pancreatic enzymes and bile are now coming in to emulsify fats at that level. So if you were really struggling with fats, we might be able to identify that, at the level of the pancreas, gallbladder, or liver, something's happening there. So this will all point back to it. So once we can identify where is digestion halted, and we can use clues from the foods and the type of fat, protein, or carbohydrate content of that, we can fix that. And then all of a sudden, I had a client call me and she's like, I got up at 3 a.m. and cooked a steak. I haven't eaten a piece of meat since being pregnant. She's like, and now I'm eating ground beef for breakfast. So once that happens, your body's like, oh my God, I needed those nutrients. I wanted those, right? And so the other thing too, that the reason why it leans me in this direction in your case of, like, the Chick-fil-A was okay, but the other form wasn't, is because fast foods notoriously strip certain nutrients out of their food, because then it's quicker to digest, it's quicker to cook, right? Like a potato, if you just bake it normally, would take a long time. It's got a lot of fibers and things that have to break down. So their food is altered in content to cook really quickly, probably to make you hungry again in 2 hours, so you want it again or more, right? And so maybe there was some component of that was shifted for you with the different types of chicken in that regard.
Yeah. Do you have any, I'm just curious now, do you have any idea why it would have been the first thing that I wanted after I gave
You're probably
birth?
so starving for those nutrients, but for whatever reason, your body wanted to protect you from it. So either your body went, okay, now we don't have to expend all this energy towards the baby, or again, if it was the type of sourcing, which I don't know why Chick-fil-A would be, this is why it doesn't lead me in this direction, but like if it was an issue of like antibiotics or something in the chicken that your body was averted to, it was protective, and now you don't have to protect the baby because it's out. So all of a sudden you're like, okay, I want to eat that again, right? It's like we get these innate senses of smell and aversion and everything else to protect the baby. It won't allow into the body what is going to harm it. And so as soon as the baby's out of the picture, your body's like, okay, we don't have to save ourselves from that anymore. Like,
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm even more curious. I have another example for you. So with was it my second or third pregnancy? I can't remember. I think it was my third pregnancy. I had a craving for Smarties, like the candy. What was my body telling me there? Like what? Like there's no nutritional, like anything in that I would need. Is that just kind of like?
Yeah, I don't know if that's like, again, certain microbes can dictate sugar cravings. Now, why Smarties of all things? I don't I don't have the answer. But what you were probably craving is really quick energy. And each pregnancy, you're more depleted. And so the resources you have to give up are less, after every pregnancy and breastfeeding journey. Like that's a massively depleting experience for a woman's body. And so if you had more quick fix sugar cravings at the end. It was like, that's how your body got energy to sustain its function potentially. So I don't know
that
why
makes sense.
Smarties versus anything else, but why sugar or carbohydrates makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. That does make sense. Now, okay, when you're working with somebody who is presenting, is pregnant and is coming to you with HG, really wanting to treat this naturally, how long can she expect to start seeing changes or to feel better?
It totally depends on what the root cause is for that woman. So if it is digestive function and therefore nutrient absorption, it might take us a couple weeks. If it's a hydration issue, it might take a few days. If it's like, it all depends. For me, I did a foul sweep. I changed my diet. I added in supplements. I changed my water. I did everything sort of at once, and I stopped throwing up in 3 days. So
Wow.
I went, from 5 to 30 times to I threw up once on the third day, and then I never threw up again. Now, in order for me to maintain that, I had to stay on the diet that I had crafted for myself. And it was actually like counterintuitive. Like the first half of my pregnancy, I was eating a lot of like fermented foods and kombuchas and meal prepping and doing all the things I thought was good. But it was actually like my kidneys were struggling, so they couldn't clear the histamine as well. So it was, not super supportive to me. I'm like, it's great at the gut level, but horrible in other areas. And so, I've had a number of women within a week feel completely different. I've had women who it does take longer. I would say the women it takes the longest for are the ones who I'm battling against their nervous system. Again, so they don't believe it's possible for them. They are like, yeah, but I can't do this. Yeah, but I can't follow that because of this reason. One of the things that I work on with my clients is like their circadian health and their light environment and going outside, even if it's for grounding or for different things. And I'll have a number of women who are like, but it doesn't get light until 9 in the morning where I am. I'm like, so then go outside at that time. Well, but my kids are awake then. I'm like, take them with you. Like, it's like, if there's a will, there's a way. And some women, I want to be mindful of how debilitating and isolating HG is. And it certainly is life altering in that capacity. I think I actually read a different statistic yesterday, but 38% of women have either thoughts of termination or suicide in this because it does feel so isolating. And at the same time, it's our choice to be a victim to it, right? So we can say like, this is really hard and push through and do the things that are going to make it better. Or we can say this is really hard and stop there.
Yeah.
So that really is a piece that, the women who take the longest want to reside in those excuses for much longer. And I understand where it comes from. And sometimes that's the only way they get support, or that's the only way that someone is paying attention to them. There's some people who just get sick for the fact that the only way they ever get to stop doing things is because they're sick, or it's the only time that they get attention from loved ones. And it's so subconscious, like they don't know that they're doing that, right? But it's like, if we can start to investigate, like, why would staying sick or having an identity of being sick serve me? And if we start to come up with answers of like, well, because then I get to take a break, or because then other people help me out, like, well, let's just solve for that problem rather than you committing to this identity of being sick so that those things are a side effect of it.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I think that that's something, like, that's definitely worth something, and is worth investigating. And I think that's one of the things too, that not to say that any other way to treat this is easy, but that might be one of the more difficult. And as you were saying, like, it takes women who are struggling with this mentality, it takes them the longest to feel better, because it's just such a big hurdle, because it is sometimes subconscious. And I think we all want to be seen. We all want to be heard. We all want to be loved. And a lot of us, myself included, I think I've also struggled with victim mentality in different ways, because you do get more sympathy maybe, or even if it's not maybe good sympathy, but it's just attention.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but it's a learned behavior, in that I am seen when I feel sick.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that that's a hard battle to fight, and that's a hard hill to get over. But that is so true. And especially when I'm thinking to myself too, like if I am paying good money to work with somebody who knows so much more about this thing than I do, who's there to help me with it, I feel like that's just, that's one battle won already. And so you better do what she's telling you to do because you know so much more about this. And clearly if somebody's seeking your help, it's because they there's part of them that doesn't want to feel sick anymore. But then when they look at, oh, I have to make this change. Oh, I have to make this change. Oh, I have to go outside, but it doesn't get light out until 9 o'clock. Those are really, in our brain, those are really good excuses to not do it. Yeah. And sometimes it is just saying it out loud. And then you're like, oh yeah, that's kind of ridiculous. Yeah. And yeah. But it makes sense that sometimes is the hardest.
And this is why I think too, like, you know, it's like we all have this. Exactly. It's human nature, right? Yeah. But just because it's human nature and it's a learned behavior doesn't mean we can't change it for the better or for a different outcome. So if it's, do I feel seen when I'm sick? More often, probably with my clients, it's, do I finally feel supported? And the reason that this is the case is because they're so sick they can't do all the things that they're used to doing. And they do all those things, whether it's for control or for safety or because they married a loser, I don't know, right? But it's like you're doing these things for a reason and you're self-sacrificing for that. So it's like if I help everybody else, then everything will be okay and you never help yourself. So when you're seeking being seen or supported or validated from somebody else, you're probably actually just feeling like you need to have better boundaries for yourself and you need to show up for yourself in that way, which is also really nice to kind of bring that full circle because that means you can actually do something about it. You don't have to rely or wait on someone. So I often speak of being an energetic match for pregnancy with some of my clients. It's like if you still think that you're going to behave the same before you got pregnant, you're still going to have the same work output. You're going to be able to care for your kids the same way. Like you weren't meant to do all of these things in isolation and wear all these hats. So right off the hop, you're an energetic mismatch for slowing down, surrendering, you know, giving of yourself to this baby and allowing others to pour into you. And so, you know, when you spoke about small things, it's like one of the things that I say that you can do is say yes to stuff when your friends want to help you or ask for it. Like, you know, hey, I'm going to be in your area. Do you want a coffee? Yes, I'd love to receive that. Thank you for supporting me. Like that shift in our mind, then rather than being like, oh no, it's okay because I feel guilty that you go out of your way to help me in any way. And you know, I'm somehow not worthy of being helped, so I'll just survive. So, there's a lot of these kinds of conversations as well that piece together in this healing picture.
Yeah, absolutely. Jes, if somebody wants to find you and work with you, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, so I am at born_from_her. I was previously the wellness element and some of my stuff is still flagged in that in different ways, but I've rebranded because I really want this to serve as a mission. I mean, my goal and the purpose behind my work is that I actually change the outcome for children. You know, I mean, of course, I want to help women who are pregnant and change that experience for them. And the reality is most of us will survive. But what can't be changed is the foundation for this child. So using this experience of pregnancy and preconception and HG and morning sickness, we can actually let that be the catalyst for changing our internal terrain, which is going to change the foundation in which children are brought into. And, you know, I look at my little boy and he's 3 and he's so high energy and he's so loving and he runs up to strangers on the streets and hugs them. And it's like, in a normal scenario, they would be like, that's too much. Right? You know, he moves too much for school or for regular sitting. And it's like, then that becomes a child who's labeled, who's medicated, who's whatever. So, you know, if we can just start this foundation where they're the most well-resourced little bodies, they're the most loved little humans, and they just feel so safe in their environment. And safety comes also from, I mean, so many of us women as well, we feel unsafe in our bodies because we're deficient. And our body feels in famine. So if we can create safety, you know, then that's going to pour into the kids and the foundation they have. So Born From Her is really about like mothers taking ownership over that responsibility and making a shift. So everything is pretty centralized from Instagram. I think that's where you find most stuff. I do have some resources and some episodes of my podcast, and that's still labeled the Wellness Element Podcast. So if you're looking to hear more about the body, it's a very small podcast that I need to get back to in some capacity, but wearing too
can't
many
do it all.
So yeah, everything is really born from her on Instagram, and
Yeah. I will say, I'll put everything in the show notes, but your Instagram, I was just kind of browsing yesterday and kind of going through it, everything that you're talking about. And it is so helpful, just like all the amount of information you have. And it's also beautiful. So yeah, highly recommend going to Born From Her.
I've had so many women
Instagram.
who have said, like, I don't have the money to afford to invest and work with you, but I followed everything you said in your Instagram and I'm better. So the resources are there. It's just, how fast and how handheld do you want that process to be? But I do really try to pour into that and share a lot.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, Jess, so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.